You two have always been remarkable to me because you did get divorced, yet you continue to live together. Separate wings of the house, but...
They're lucky it's quite a big house.
When people talk about the collapse of the marriage between the former Duke and Duchess of York, the conversation usually circles around scandal, the toe-sucking photographs, the tabloid frenzy, the sense that everything simply spun out of control. But according to Sarah Ferguson's own mother, the real reason their marriage failed had nothing to do with photographs or press intrusion. She believed it came down to something far more basic. She said Prince Andrew had no character. That assessment, shared years later and revived in Andrew Lownie's book entitled "Lands Differently When You Really Sit With It." It's not dramatic language, it's not flowery, and given the time and context, was not said for effect. It's almost worse than that. It is flat, blunt, and deeply personal. And because it came from her mother, Susan Barrantes, it forces us to re-examine the marriage from the inside out, rather than the outside in. To understand why her words matter so much, you have to go back to the beginning. When Andrew and Sarah married in July 1986, everything about the moment felt optimistic. The wedding took place at Westminster Abbey and was watched by around 500 million people worldwide.
And out into the sunshine they stepped to face those crowds for the first time as the Duke and Duchess of York, with the enthusiastic and ever-hopeful chanting of "Kiss the Bride."
Britain was still riding a wave of goodwill toward Andrew after the Falklands War. He was young, confident, and seen as a genuine asset to the monarchy. Sarah, with her laugh, her openness, and her refusal to behave like a porcelain figurine, felt relatable to many women watching at home. For a brief period, it looked like the royal family had found something it desperately needed: warmth. But almost immediately, the practical realities of the marriage began to bite. Andrew was still an active naval officer. His career kept him away for long stretches of time, sometimes for months at once. While this was presented publicly as noble service, privately it created a marriage that rarely functioned like a partnership. Sarah was left alone to manage royal life, public scrutiny, and motherhood largely by herself. Susan Barrantes saw this firsthand. She was not watching from afar. She was observing her daughter's emotional state, her isolation, and the imbalance in the relationship. When she later spoke to the Italian magazine Gente, she did not deny Andrew's charm. In fact, she described him as good-looking, generous, and someone who would give away his last bit of money to help another person. Then she delivered the blow. She said he lacked character. Absolutely none. That is not a comment about infidelity alone. It is a comment about dependability, about emotional backbone, about showing up consistently when things are difficult, rather than when they are easy or flattering. By the early 1990s, the marriage was visibly under strain. Both Andrew and Sarah engaged in extramarital relationships. According to Lownie, this behaviour became so destabilising that senior members of the royal family felt compelled to step in. Andrew was reportedly sat down for a serious conversation, something approaching an intervention. One detail from Entitled stands out because of how casually shocking it is. Lownie writes that Sarah invited one of her lovers to Andrew's 30th birthday party. That detail is not included for gossip alone. It illustrates how chaotic the marriage had become and how little structure or mutual respect remained. In March 1992, Andrew and Sarah announced their separation.
Anyway, the children are well, I'm well, Duke's well, everybody's well, and we're just getting on with it. It's entirely and utterly a personal thing between the Duke and I. And nobody else.
At the time, Princess Beatrice was 8 years old and Princess Eugenie was 6. This was not a quiet separation tucked away from public view. It happened against a backdrop of intense media interest.
Fall from grace is finally complete, stripped of everything, from his titles to his home. It is a remarkable and radical royal downfall.
And it triggered a swift and brutal shift in how Sarah was treated. Almost overnight, she went from being one of the most popular members of the royal family to one of the least popular. Polls reflected that change clearly. Andrew Lownie notes that during this period, there were various leaks designed to discredit Sarah. Susan Barrantes believes strongly that blame was being redirected onto her daughter in order to protect the institution. But these leaks were not false. Much of the rhetoric was based on her behaviour, which was undeniably concerning. We can't say she was an innocent bystander in all of this. But one of the most sensitive issues was custody. Barrantes was determined that Sarah would not lose her daughters. This is where the story becomes uncomfortable, because Barrantes herself had once left her own young family to move to Argentina with a lover. Critics were quick to point out the contradiction. But from Barrantes' perspective, this was about ensuring that Sarah did not become a disposable figure in a system that had already turned against her. Years later, Sarah would offer a much more polished explanation for the divorce.
And I just read, and I hope it's true, you bought a Swiss chalet. Is that true?
Well, we've got a good mortgage.
In a 2007 interview with Harper's Bazaar, she said she wanted to work and that it was not appropriate for a princess of the royal house to be commercial. She framed the divorce as a mutual, pragmatic decision that allowed her to earn a living. That explanation has always raised eyebrows. Not because it is false, but because it is incomplete. Wanting to work does not require emotional implosion, affairs, or institutional intervention. It explains the aftermath, not the breakdown itself. Susan Barrantes' comments fill in that missing emotional context. She was not talking about careers or protocol. She was talking about strength of character within a marriage, about the ability to sustain a relationship when it becomes repetitive, demanding, or unglamorous. What makes this even more interesting is what happened after the divorce. Despite officially divorcing in 1996, Andrew and Sarah remained unusually close. By 2008, they were living together again at Royal Lodge, albeit in separate wings. Over the years, they have repeatedly described themselves as the happiest divorced couple. They attend family events together, present a united front publicly, and speak warmly of one another in interviews.
100% live together, and we are always going to be together. And, you know, we just have a very strong belief about compromise, communication, and compassion.
Their daughters have reinforced that narrative. Princess Beatrice, speaking on the Lessons from Our Mothers podcast, describes Sarah as someone who always found a way to inject joy into difficult moments. She spoke about adventure, resilience, and the ability to jump into life even when circumstances were challenging. Beatrice reflected on the divorce years without bitterness. She described her childhood as filled with movement, curiosity, and emotional openness. She spoke much about her mother, but Prince Andrew's role, by contrast, often feels passive in these recollections. Present, but not anchoring. Involved, but not steady. That brings us back to Susan Barrantes and her blunt assessment. When she said Andrew lacked character, she was not calling him evil or malicious. Seems those allegations would take years to arrive. She was pointing to an absence, an inability to hold things together when pressure mounted. Today, as the former Duke and Duchess of York prepare to leave Royal Lodge in 2026, those old observations feel newly relevant. Time has passed. Titles have been lost. Public reputations have shifted dramatically. But the fundamental dynamics that defined their marriage remain familiar to anyone who has followed their story closely. So, now I pose a question to you. Was Susan Barrantes right from the beginning? Was this marriage doomed not by scandal, but by Andrew's lack of character? Or do you think both parties were to blame? Sarah's infidelity, financial irresponsibility, coupled with Andrew's lewd behaviour and lack of character, did they simply make a disastrous combination? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want more deep dives into the real stories behind royal headlines, subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next one.